All right, guys. Hey, welcome. This is part 2 of the video I just did. I just did a energy update. I did a recap of last week's energies. I talked a little bit about my own personal experiences. At the end, I spoke a little bit about COrVID. So if you feel like the video is too long and you just want to fast forward to the end, feel free to do that. I'm just going to go into a little flow. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I've set my intention to connect with my highest self and source energy, and that this be for the highest levels of love light already. And so some of this is just meant to be felt. I'll do English and light language. It'll kind of go back and forth. And as we move into this greater space of well-being and wondrous expectations, play on words. I'm hearing great expectations. I'm seeing a reference to the movie, and I'll come to that maybe later. For there are many wondrous activities that are being accessed right now that many of us are feeling into, that are moving into, that are recognizing are in movement, that are recognizing are moving into our view. Yet the loud noises, I keep saying this, loud noises, the loud noises, and I'm hearing pot banging, clanging, are creating a barrier for some. And this is to be expected, for the barriers that we have been up against from one perspective are vast and old. Meaning they are something that we have been in the habit of interacting with for so long, that when those barriers cease to exist, we find ourselves falling back into the same mold, the same patterns, and we feel a sense of avoidance. This is a play on words. We're avoiding change, and also it's difficult for us to extract the juice from what's being offered because we're tuning into, okay, I'm seeing Mountain Dew. So Mountain Dew, we know, is high in sugar, high in caffeine, and toxic, although it's delicious if you like toxicity and high sugar. But I'm just being shown that essentially it's, when we're on that, it's difficult when we come out of that to then figure out how to act, how to interact. For the ways that we interact with each other is shifting. Many of us are experiencing the human potentials of telepathy. Many are experiencing the claircognizant interactions that we have with our entire network of guidance teams. Many of us are still tuned into the old energies of fear, and this is part of what it is that it is meant to be a human. For the human is a beautiful, interactive composium of mass consciousness abilities. We have the ability to interact with consciousness on mass scales. And many of us have been dummied down from one perspective, from one point of view. Many of us have felt like dummies. Many of us have been treated like dummies, and many of us have dummied our own abilities by creating a false sense of security in an old reality that made us feel big. Ooh. So it's a false security. And I'm just seeing all of these belief systems that we believed in that made us feel part of something are beginning to fall apart, are beginning to come apart at the seams, are beginning to show us the seamlessness. I'm being shown that we are seamless, but it's the senselessness. Many of us are seeing through what seems to be a senseless interaction and recognizing that this is what we've been interacting with the whole time. And the Truman Show is another example of what I'm seeing. For as we interact in our new environment, as we come to terms with the old terms, play on words, we then tune into our ability to terminate that which it was that we were oh boy, I'm hearing redemption, terminology, terms, like a time frame, setting certain rules, and exterminating. I'm seeing a reference to when we're terminal, and I'm seeing a reference to pulling into the terminal. So a lot of us are sitting in, there was a movie, I can't remember, it was a Stephen King movie, but this is what I'm being shown. And we're being stuck in this terminal. And some of us are waiting for the plane to come in, but we're not recognizing that we can fly without the plane. Where we have used old terminology. We have been terminized, if you will. And as we come to terms with this, we allow ourselves to tune into a new term, a new stage, a new time, a new place. And we reflect on that which is no longer who we are. We reflect on and we see in our truth a new reflection of who we truly are, yet we recognize in the mirror that which we have been. This gives us the ability to terminate the old programs without the hostility when we do not look on or look within, to recognize that which we have served in has actually served us in so many ways. Okay, so I'm being guided just to break this down a little bit. So we've been on this term like jail sentence. We've served our time, but we've also, like, there's still a lot of people, as I was kind of saying in the last video, that are feeling guilty, that feel guilty. They put themselves in this jail cell, like Lucifer. You guys have not seen that show. Like, people are still coming to terms with this. They're not recognizing that they're still in the terminal waiting for somebody to come scoop them up, waiting for them to be recognized. So some people are waiting to be recognized by others to give them the validity that they have permission to be who they really are. Ooh, I'm seeing this as really symbolic right now. So we have to look in the mirror, and this is something that's come up for me in the last several weeks as well, and see who we really are now, and see reflecting back to us all of these versions and past versions of us, to come to terms with that so that we can integrate, forgive, clear, resolve, dissolve, all of that. And so many of us are in the fun house right now, looking at all of these mirrors and not necessarily liking what we see, or waiting for someone else to get us out of this fun house. Have you ever been lost in the house of mirrors? And also I'm being shown that people are lost in the fun house. They're lost in that space thinking that that's their reality. It is difficult for us sometimes to look at who we really are, to see ourselves staring back at us, and to love ourselves. For many of us, judge our appearance. Many of us are looking at what appears to be real and judging that. Many of us are in a place of complexity in which our emotions are scattered to the wind, and we are winding down, if you will. We are feeling shut down, and we are having difficulty seeing within. For when we are scattered, for when we feel as if I'm seeing as also a reference to keep all of us scattered all over the earth, and some of us feel like we're too far away from where we think we need to be, or our fellow humans, we're too far apart. But this also inner to outer, micro to macro. And many of us think that the path has been chosen for us. Okay, I just wrote about this, so I'm being guided to go a little deeper. And in some realities and subsets, this is true, for we have chosen a particular path. We are being invited not to project our own idea of what others' paths should look like. For we do not necessarily know, I'm hearing we don't know what we don't know. We do not necessarily know what opportunity this other individual's paths are going to present for them, that in actuality may assist you on your own journey. Meaning, I'm showing that there's people who, there's layers. So let's say that there's a group of truthers, right? Who are projecting a particular truth. Then there's subsets and bubbles who agree with one of those truths, but disagree with the other truths. And so they say, well, you're right, but you're not doing it the right way. We're being invited to let that all go. I mean, it's challenging to do that, but there's a lot of double agents. I said this 2 years ago, I think. People that we think are not all love and light are actually undercover. Under pressure. So some of us are really going to be invited to look at what we've projected onto them. And this could be friends, family members, political leaders, world leaders. I just keep getting shown all of these double agents. People that we thought were on the up and up are going to be, I'm hearing some people will be very disappointed. And that's part of the human condition, right? Is this disappointment. So the less we can force our views on how someone else should view things, on how someone else needs to choose where they go or what they do, then that takes the pressure off, because we don't realize that. I'm hearing that song Under My Thumb by Rolling Stones, right? Under my thumb. Like, it is not our job to put pressure under someone else, be the ruler of someone else's realities. Of course, unless they're doing harm, and then we can step up and offer a solution so that that doesn't continue. That could be something completely different, right? For as we recognize the confusion that many have been tossed into, as we let go of the need to confuse our own perspective with the perspective abilities that perhaps that person might be in need of experiencing before they can fine-tune their reality. So some people are choosing to go and do something, for example, to their bodies that maybe not everybody else agrees with, but they are making that choice. We may believe that they are harming themselves, or we may believe that they are harming themselves by not doing it. Those are examples of projections of our belief systems based on truths that are true at different levels and different layers. We don't know what we don't know. Perhaps that person making that choice leads them to having an experience with a particular doctor, a particular nurse, a particular conversation that was part of what they, when I go back to our futures being set for us, we have blueprints that we've created to line us up to be with the right people at the right time. And so that's constantly shifting, but perhaps we made the agreement that we were going to have this conversation with this particular doctor. And that one conversation then allowed them to open their mind to look a little deeper, that then shifted their reality and their ability to have an impact on other people's lives. I'm just using that as an example. And it may not look the way somebody else might be set. Somebody else might be fulfilling their own prophecy, yet we may not understand what that looks like. To us, it looks like they're making the wrong decision. But from a bigger, more expansive picture, they're making the decision based on their own right way. But that's a plan where it's a right angle. Maybe that's the puzzle piece that they need to use to fit into a particular life experience that they were contracted to have, if you want to look at it that way, although I feel that's an old paradigm, but that's okay. Or they might be choosing that life experience so that they could physically experience something that they felt the need to have, for example, so on and so forth. we may not understand, and it's not necessarily for us to understand. For the advancement of humanity is oftentimes hindered based on the thoughtful persuasion against human advancement. It's play on words. So essentially what I'm being shown is that we hinder ourselves sometimes because we're not following a certain set of ideas and platforms. Yeah. So now we are in a moment where we are being offered the opportunity to look at all as connected to a fine-tuned machine, and that which was tuned into an old machine network, so to speak, that which many are choosing not to continue to build on, like a reality, a matrix, that is in the process of falling apart. Yet, as it falls apart, many too will fall down with it if they allow those frequencies to pull them under. And so we are in a space of really recognizing our own habitual patterns, our own inner programs, our own inner recognition in which we recognize how to stabilize our abilities in the most expansive way possible. For as we stabilize ourselves, we then stabilize the entire field. Yet, if there are those of us who are choosing to play in the old way, then we continue to play in the old way. Therefore, we do not necessarily see the stage in which we are playing within. I'm seeing like when you're in it, you can't see it necessarily. But when you take a step back and you're able to witness and observe things without being completely enveloped in the experience, you can do both. You could go with this, you could go with that. So then what happens is we're able to stabilize things and we're not completely wrapped up in the emotions, because the emotional experience is just a part of the experience. The emotional experience isn't the only part to be had. And this is the play on words, like when you have a part in a role in a play, it's not the only thing there, because that emotional experience is only one essence. If we take a step back and we can observe the entire experience, feel the emotions, recognize what it means for us, see our interaction with the other players in the field or on the game board or in the stage, right? The set that we're in, that becomes a more expansive experience. It allows us to process energy, frequency, and information at a much higher level. Then our experience gets played back into our thought patterns, our habit patterns, and our frequency. And this is then more accessible for others to tune into. So this leads me back to what I was seeing in my last video for the energy update, is a lot of people's telepathy is kicking in. A lot of people's clairvoyance and clairaudience is kicking in. And when one of us activates ourselves and I think Dan Winters talks about it, it's usable information. We're sharing our DNA. DNA is in everything. They talk about, there's a name for it, I call it air DNA, but essentially it's everywhere. It isn't just inside of us. It's also esoteric. It's quantum, right? So when we have a shareable thought, that ripples out. When we're just in our emotions and we're angry and we're confused because we think that the play that we're in is real and it's the only thing that's real for us in that moment. We've all been there. Well, I won't speak for you, but I've been there. just last week, actually, a few times. But as soon as I was able to acknowledge and recognize, whoa, I'm really getting sucked into this, it gave me a different angle, gave me a different perspective, offered a different vibration. I was able to tune into something besides the emotion of anger. Not that that's an emotion, but you get where I'm going with that. And then that became, it clicked in to other puzzle pieces that were accessible, but would have been inaccessible had I have not expanded my awareness and zoomed out rather than just zooming in and looking at things in from one perspective. Hearing the word plot hound, and it's a type of, I'm seeing like using our sense, our like a hound dog, like just being on, sensing, but also recognizing, I'm hearing something about, plotting. So it's plotting our course, allows us to chart our course, allows us to unhinge old plots. Ooh, fun. It allows us to work through plots of land. Also, I'm seeing that changes then our own ability to access these different frequencies. So I'll have to play with that a little bit. Okay, I'm being guided to stop. I love this. So it's beautiful dog, plot hound. But what I'm seeing is it's obviously reference to smell, our senses, using our sense of smell and sight. And but it says, I'm looking at plot. So it's qubit, small virtual reality measuring tool with Bluetooth. So background in either map format or picture, get real life dimensional measurements for design. You guys, when I read this, I'm like reading it for like life. See how your design looks as well as how it fits. This is what I mean by learning to navigate the new energies, learning how to communicate and recognize how everything is communicating with us and the different ways of communication. So when I look at this, I'm seeing that this is gifting us the ability. So if we utilize this tool and we utilize these abilities, we then can map or format. We see the background. We hear the background noise. We go through it, okay? We then get a real life dimensional measurement for design. We see how far ahead things are. We start to recognize the bigger design. We start to be able to apply this in real life, and we start to step away from this virtual reality. I mean, we're in a virtual reality from one perspective, but we start to see, oh, wait a minute, this is a facade. So what's real is what might feel like it's not real, such as telepathy, clairvoyance, and clairaudience. It says, see how your design looks as well as it fits. So you're getting a different angle. We're getting the opportunity to not only see it, but feel it and see, where does this fit in? Again, it's those puzzle pieces clicking into place. Tell the qubit to guide you to the points that you select in your design. So again, from my perspective, what's happening is it's putting us back in, it's pointing to something. We are then telling our reality what we'd like to design. It isn't being designed for us. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying. A lot of people feel like their reality has been shaped for them, and they don't feel like they have that control. And in some cases, that is true. But from a broader perspective, things have shifted, and we are creating our reality in a much different way than it has been available to us in the past. Bridge between digital design and the real world. I'm reading this off of Home Depot. Qubit smart reality measuring tool with Bluetooth. So it's the bridge between the facade and what's real, which is ironic because it doesn't feel real. It feels like I was saying earlier with the Bermuda Triangle, and it feels like our compass is all wonky. And that's because this false facade reality has been projected at us for so long. We've become so habitual, not everybody, I'm just using it as an example, as a collective, that we're like, oh, this feels too unreal. Well, some of it is unreal, and that's why it's falling apart. And then it says connect, conspire, and create. I love that. So what is this all about? Connecting, conspiring, and creating based on this new reality that's available to us. It's not always going to feel easy, though. I feel like there was more to that, but I'll just kind of end on that note. So funny. So as we feel past just the emotional charges that are being set off in our field right now, recognizing that there are many charges that are purposely being set to trigger us into human flurry, if you will. This also is, though, to trigger us into growth. For some people are triggered into action from certain feelings and emotions, such as anger. Sometimes anger can be a useful charge. And so recognizing that sometimes these have been set in our environment, it's not always about the bad guys versus the good guys. Sometimes it's a necessary, I'm being shown again the avalanche. So if the charges aren't set up in the right plots, territories, then the avalanche it can hurt people. Well, it could hurt people no matter what, if you're not aware that if you're not aware that those charges are being set, and you're just out skiing on the mountain, and that the avalanche comes down, then you just get sucked into it. So we're being aware of these charges. We're seeing it. Oh, okay. Wow. That was a trigger. That was intentional. That's not real, but it did trigger this emotion in me. Now we're looking at things from the broader perspective. I want to share on a very human note. I cried so many times last week based on triggers and charges that were set in the collective of things I watched that made my heart sad. From one perspective, my heart doesn't get sad. My human felt sad because of experiences that my brothers and sisters are going through that are difficult. So I'm just sharing, though, rather than getting caught in the avalanche, some of these things have been set through the blueprint, through the agreements, through the contracts, in order to bring us through this next stage that much faster. So it can feel, so just being aware of that and not getting pulled into that avalanche, but seeing the avalanche for what it is very important for right now. So I'm going to kind of end on that note, and I've got many different directions I could go with this. So I'll come back and to be continued. So in love and light, guys, the universe is always communicating with us. It's not always obvious when the universe is communicating with us, but you guys, our skills as creator beings has really opened, blossomed. And so it's about finding that. I keep seeing a skier skiing over the avalanche or right in front of it, not running from it, but knowing what to do to stay ahead of it or stay on top of it. And there are going to be our brothers and sisters who are buried, and will be part of that crew that helps to maybe get them out of that avalanche or point out the fact that there's an avalanche coming. I always had those nightmares when I was younger, that there was a big, tidal wave coming, and people were just like, no, I don't see anything. And I'm like, it's right there. And that was something that I had to really work through and recognize not everybody's going to see it. But we can come together, we can create this ripple effect, and this is going to help to balance out the avalanche. I just watched the movie Dune. I'd never saw the original, so I'm going to go back and watch the original because I think that that's probably a lot more a lot more than this new one. I enjoyed it, but they have these devices that like, it's like this, they click a button and it puts like a force field kind of around them. I always think of I am the force because I am the Jedi, but that's kind of what I'm being shown. Like, it's like when we get into that, we're not as affected. Doesn't mean we're not human and we're not feeling things and we're cold. It just means our force field expands out and we're able to ride out these energies a little bit more consistently, in turn helping our brothers and sisters. Plural. All right, in love and light, guys. Namaste.